All right, today we're going to talk about something pretty dark. It's one of the most disturbing chapters in American intelligence history, a secret CIA program called MK Ultra.
So let's just start with a really unsettling question. What if your government decided that your mind wasn't just something to protect, but that it was a battlefield, a weapon that could be captured, controlled, and even turned against itself? You know, for the CIA back in the 1950s, this wasn't just some hypothetical idea. It was a full-blown obsession.
And where did this obsession come from? Well, it all started with the single, really powerful fear that just gripped the entire country right after the Korean War.
So check this out. The Korean War ends in 1953, and then something happens that nobody saw coming. 21 American POWs, they refused to come home. They actually chose to stay in communist China. Now you have to imagine, for the American public and for the intelligence agencies, this was just incomprehensible. I mean, how could these soldiers, guys who were raised in a free country, just willingly embrace totalitarianism? It didn't make any sense.
And this event, it gave birth to a brand new, terrifying concept: brainwashing. Right? The idea that a person's mind could be systematically broken down, just shattered, and then rebuilt by an enemy. This wasn't just the plot of some spy novel anymore. For the CIA, this became a very, very real threat. An existential one.
And what's really crucial here is just how fast all of this escalated. The fear that was sparked by those POWs, it led directly to action. We're talking just months later. On April 13, 1953, CIA Director Allen Dulles gave the green light to a top-secret program designed to counter this exact threat. Its name was MK Ultra, and its goal? To win the mind control arms race, to master it before the enemy did.
Okay, so let's talk about the guy who actually ran this whole thing, and the massive secret network he built to make it all happen.
This is where it gets really weird. The man they picked to lead MK Ultra was a guy named Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, and he was just a walking contradiction. On the one hand, you have this quiet biochemist, right? He lived on a goat farm, he liked folk dancing. But on the other hand, this same guy was known inside the CIA as the Black Sorcerer. He was the architect of some of the most monstrous experiments the US government has ever conducted, and he did it all with a huge budget and basically zero oversight.
And when I say massive, I mean it. Look at this number 149. That's how many different sub-projects were running under the MK Ultra umbrella. The CIA was funneling money through all these front organizations to 80 different institutions. We're talking prestigious universities, hospitals, even prisons. And the craziest part? A lot of them had no clue their research was secretly being paid for by the agency for, mind control.
So what was their main tool in this whole quest? Well, it was LSD. For Gottlieb and the CIA, this powerful new drug seemed like it was the key they've been looking for, a chemical way to just shatter someone's consciousness, leaving their mind wide open for manipulation and reprogramming. And so they started testing it on thousands of people. And yeah, often without their knowledge and definitely without their consent.
And the methods they used, they got depraved fast. There was this one sub-project, and get this, it was called Operation Midnight Climax. The CIA literally set up brothels in New York and San Francisco. They'd lure unsuspecting men in, spike their drinks with LSD, and then agents would just watch from behind two-way mirrors, taking notes while these guys' minds completely unraveled. I mean, this wasn't science. It was just pure, raw exploitation.
And that brings us to what's really the most important part of this whole story: the human cost. The devastating, real-world impact that all of these experiments had on actual people. Okay, so up at McGill University in Montreal, there was a CIA-funded psychiatrist, Dr. Donald Ewan Cameron. He developed something he called de-patterning. And what he did was he would take patients, people who are often just there for things like anxiety, put them into drug-induced comas, hit them with massive doses of electroshock therapy, and play these looped audio messages to them for weeks straight. The whole goal was to literally erase their personalities. The result? Just complete devastation. This quote you see here is about one of his patients, a woman named Mary Morrow. She went in for anxiety. She came out a shell of the person she was before. She couldn't recognize her own husband, her own children. Her memory, her entire identity was just gone. And the truly horrible part is that her story wasn't unique.
The program also went after the most vulnerable people you can imagine. In a Kentucky prison, a Dr. Harris Isbell ran experiments on African-American inmates. He would offer them heroin as a reward for participating. In one of his studies, he gave guys high doses of LSD for 77 days in a row. Their consent was totally coerced, and it's clear their lives are just seen as expendable.
And sometimes the program even turned on its own people. Take the story of Frank Olson. He was an Army biochemist who was connected to MKUltra. In November of '53, he's at a CIA retreat, and Sidney Gottlieb himself secretly spikes his drink with LSD after dinner. Olson had a terrible reaction, became severely paranoid,
And then, just 10 days later, Frank Olson plunged to his death from his 10th floor hotel room in New York. The official story was that it was a suicide. His family wouldn't find out the truth about the CIA's involvement for another 22 years.
So you have to be asking, how did a program this huge, this criminal, stay secret for so long? And what happened when the truth finally started coming out? Well, the answer is simple: a massive cover-up.
So, in 1973, the Watergate scandal is blowing up, and there's suddenly this huge spotlight on government secrets. The CIA director at the time, Richard Helms, gives a very simple and devastating order: destroy everything. And for weeks, that's what they did. Agents shredded and burned 20 years of files, just systematically erasing all the evidence.
Which, of course, leads to the big question. After all of this came out in congressional hearings, did anyone at all, ever get held accountable?
The answer is simple, and it's absolutely chilling. No, not one single CIA officer ever faced criminal charges for what they did in MKUltra. Between the destroyed records and just a total lack of political will, the architects of the whole program, guys like Sidney Gottlieb, they just retired.
So what's the takeaway here? What's the real legacy of MKUltra? Well, first off, it was a complete failure. They never developed a single workable mind control technique. It produced zero valuable intelligence. But what it did do was shatter thousands of lives. And it stands as this chilling lesson in what happens when a government agency is allowed to operate with total secrecy and zero accountability.
And that leaves us with one last really critical question to think about. The whole justification for MKUltra, right, was to protect America from its enemies. But it really makes you wonder, at what point does that pursuit of security become its own kind of terror? A terror that's not aimed at some foreign enemy, but at your own people?